I did have a separate question, but it relates so strongly to this, and that is regarding public campaign finance. And again, I respect your opinion, and I want your opinion because you've been immersed in politics, and you've seen it happen over there at the Roundhouse. And it seems to me, and a lot of people, that elected officials have to spend so much time at fundraisers and currying favor and giving attention to large donors, whether they be corporations or individuals. What do you think of the idea that if we had a fund, if citizens were informed about this and knew that for $6 each, average, voters for $6 each could contribute and finance equal to all the money that's put into electoral campaigns, that they would then have influence, private individual contributions to campaigns would be knocked out? What do you think of replacing the whole individual and corporate finance system with a public campaign financing system?
I think what you would end up with is you'd end up with a bunch of kooks running for office that would be able to access these funds. And I really think that limiting campaign contributions ends up having the opposite effect that people believe that it has. By limiting campaign contributions, you end up potentially indebted or having to curry favor from thousands of contributors rather than just a handful.
Well, the voters. What I'm suggesting is that all voters, in other words taxpayers, contribute what it takes, which I think is $6 a voter, to a general fund to pay for advertising, which I question, having to pay for TV advertising, but that's another story. Then you're accountable to everyone, not just any.
Well, no. Then the question is, who gets to access that fund? Anybody running for office, right?
Well, we have rules in this state, for instance, about what you have to do to qualify for office.
Well,
right?
Okay. Well, so I would just suggest that anybody's going to be able to qualify running for office, and you're going to make funds available to kooks. I'll label them just plain kooks, that are going to have an equal access to money. Okay, and so the kooks get the equal access to money, and I go in and I run for office. Well, I've got a higher name familiarity than some individual that may, in fact, let's not label them a kook. Let's label them a legitimate, upstanding, an individual you would want to vote for.
Yeah.
But now that individual has to compete against somebody who has really good name familiarity, and they both have an equal amount of money. This individual that's the upstart may not be able to succeed because he's going up against the old warhorse ensconced politician that is fixed in their ways and isn't going to do the public any good at all.
Well, I think that's kind of my point. That if the upstart kook can get 100,000 or 5,000 signatures on a petition,
upstart and kook are two different separate categories.
So the kook
is going to get the same amount of money as this brilliant upstart person we all need to elect. The kook and the upstart are going to get the same amount of money. And what's going to differentiate between the two, as opposed to a system where this brilliant upstart can actually go out and curry funds from individuals that see this and give them more money?
Well, what I was trying to inject was that the person who can get 5,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 signatures on his petition, that's the person who may have been considered the kook, but I'm suggesting that might be the person who would qualify for the campaign funds and the position on the ballot. So that's what I'm talking about. Limits like rules like we have as to who qualifies.
Well, you can pay groups to go out and get you signatures. So
that's fair enough.
Well, I would just argue that campaign finance reform, limiting campaign contributions, ends up having the opposite effect from what you would think. Sounds good. Sounds good to limit campaign contributions. Sounds good to make a pool available that everybody would have equal access to, that somehow this would level the playing field. I just argue that that it actually is just the opposite. Just the opposite.
Okay, fair enough. You answered my question. One final question in terms of what really concerns me, and I wonder if it concerns you. The issue of demagoguery, in my mind. Some of the people who I won't mention by name, like Rush Limbaugh, for instance, comes to mind, who have made a career out of demonizing people, demonstrably, in my opinion, lying, and to me, mischaracterizing what you stand for instance, if he gets on your case. To me, there seems to be no shame in that anymore. It really directs the political debate, demonizing people, attack ads, another whole area that you could be defeated, or anybody could be defeated with a sufficient number of attack ads, with a sufficient amount of money. Does any of this concern you or register? You have any thoughts on this?
Well, I ran 2 campaigns for governor where I did not mention my opponent in print, radio, or television.
Yeah.
I debated my opponent the second time 28 times. So I'm a firm believer in talking about what it is that I have to offer, not about what my opponent lacks.
Okay.
And I think there's an appetite from the electorate for that kind of candidate. Now, I happen to be the only one I think we can lay claim to this. So I'm in complete agreement. When I always I don't drink, but I would figuratively crack the champagne every time my opponents ran a negative ad against me, because I always viewed it as negative advertising. It was a way to set the issue up, and yeah, I talked about the issue, but I certainly didn't lob it back as a negative against my opponent.
Well, do you not feel that campaign designers, strategists, say somebody who's running a campaign against you or wants to get you out of the picture, you don't feel they're skillful enough, and that some of these radio commentators are skillful enough and believed enough that if they focus on you and want to get you out of the picture, that they could get you out of the picture by simply mischaracterizing you, labeling you as a kook, and making up a few more specifics and knocking you out of the picture with enough money and enough repetition? You don't believe so, or you're not concerned about it? You don't think that the demonization, polarization that's happening now is...
I think you've got a great point. I think you've got a great point, and that happens to many individuals. I'm in the camp that when it comes to me personally, that all it does is draw attention to what it is that I'm saying, and I have always viewed what I've said as common sense, as cost benefit driven. You know, what's the cost? What's the benefit?
Okay.
And I'm going to argue that regardless. And so when it comes to anyone that's going to criticize me, it just draws attention to the issue. Others, I would argue, yeah, this can bring about the end to individuals, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Well, I appreciate your sense of invulnerability. I like that kind of confidence.
Well, no, I don't want to label it invulnerability. I just want to label it as a furtherance of being able to get the message out.